This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast revisiting television sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, Outcasts, episodes 3 and 4.
What's this?
Data, which might have a very important message for us. We don't know. Professor Rosen was a casualty of the transporter. We need to decipher this so that we can...
Was he Jewish?
I don't know. The name would suggest so, yes.
You're Jewish, right? Ison.
My family were, my husband is. What does it matter?
Einstein was. Didn't talk till he was a kid either. I admire Jews. Used to say I was one.
Tipper Malone might have given the game away, I suspect.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast being broadcast exclusively on Radio Free Carpathia, but only on vinyl. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
I got a question for you. You mentioned the pirate radio that's in this show that Tipper runs. Do you think when he's doing it, he constantly has audio issues like we do and has to stop and then re-record?
It's a good question. This is our second attempt at this episode. Hopefully, the last attempt. There won't be a third in our future.
Do you think that's an interesting or not interesting thing for a viewer to watch on TV? Watch someone just have technical issues with that has nothing to do with the plot. You're just watching someone be like, "Oh, I didn't update.
Oh no, my drivers are out of date."
Yeah.
Boring, I think.
Yeah, boring
for the audience.
Yeah, maybe not for this show.
Well, that's true. About par for this show.
Mm-hmm.
I could see an episode where someone just has to fix something.
Yeah.
And we just watch them fix it for a while.
No, they wouldn't even fix it. They would just tell you it's been fixed in quiet tones. They'd be like, "Oh, Luke, we'll need to fix that hard drive. And the reason is because it makes me feel about things." And then you say, "Oh, interesting. I guess I'll watch you fix it." And then we would never actually see the fixing. But they'd have a quiet conversation where I, the whole time, am going, "What? What are they saying?
Speak up.
Speak up."
My hearing's gone out. All right. Well, we're going to move forward with this we're going to go right to the show because we did a game, but now it doesn't work. So sorry, listeners.
You'll never know how fun it was.
It was so much fun. Jordan got 2 out of 6.
Anyways,
that's how many actors he could guess the roles they did.
Yeah. So episode 3, because there's no titles for these. Do you think that's indicative of something?
I think it is just, this is, because this one...
Super serialized show.
Super serialized. It's also, this is a show, like British TV, it's all by, like, a real strong, like, lead force, I think. I think they view them as chapters. So that would be my guess as to why you wouldn't name them. Also, easier.
Yeah.
Don't sit around having to think of a title for everything.
I mean, what would the title for this one be? Here's episode 3.
You want yours?
Mine's Sandstorm.
Sandstorm. Oh, mine was... No. Whiteout.
That's much better. I like to see that typed.
Yeah. Just you're right. I can't. I'm not sure that's how the song goes, but that's how it goes in my mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, here it comes. Whiteout.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 3. Floor tries to make peace with the ACs, while a whiteout threatens to destroy Forthaven. Case sets out on an impossible rescue mission. That's it.
Yeah. Neil, let me ask you something. We're going to talk about the Sandstorm.
I've broken these plots into sort of pieces.
Great. So, but let's, if you'll indulge me, the Sandstorm. Can we just talk about it? So we have come to a planet, Carpathia.
Yes.
That for all intents purposes is a carbon-based.
Sure, I don't know that. I don't know
planet,
science.
or whatever we call it. It's the same as Earth.
Right.
It has a apparently oxygen.
It's a real Earth 2, if you will.
Yeah, it's Earth 2. Because there's no sign of them having to, like, import in oxygen or create some sort of...
Birds live there.
Yeah, and you hear them. You hear birds in this. I've noticed there was birds in the background.
No, squaws, though.
We don't know what other species are living there. We're assuming there's insects, there's other animals. We haven't seen them. Saying all of that, this sandstorm, do they call it sandstorm? Whiteout. It seems to operate in a way that is different than would naturally occur on Earth. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes, these are definitely fantastical storms.
Right. So that was my point, because it seems, and we'll talk about it, it seems that they're almost electricity-based, and they seem to start not from wind, but some sort of, there's a catalyst I don't understand. They seem to start out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we see them, like, we'll see, like, shots from orbit, and it looks like a hurricane coming together. And then occasionally we'll see like a tornado spin out of a lake, and it's shooting electricity, but then it dies out very quickly. Or one will just kick up in a sandstorm, something. There's like a little dust devil, if you will, kicking off electricity. But there's no clear. I mean, I guess it's wind based, but we're never given a clear idea of why.
Because as a comparison, you mentioned Earth 2, which we've said, I think, in the previous podcast, this is in some ways very similar to, at least a very similar sort of archetype of a show. That show, and I can't believe I'm defending Earth 2, at least set up that on that planet they were on, Earth 2.
Not Carpathia, don't get confused.
Yeah, it's not Carpathia. There was fantastical elements that you got right off the bat. The water was electricity. There's the Earth is also alive, and all these sorts of things. So you kind of got that sense. This, up till this point, is just Earth. So it's weird to be adding this element. I don't know. Maybe I'm.
No, you're not wrong.
Focusing on it too much.
I think it is one of the things is because this show tries to hide everything from you. Like it really wants to surprise you. You end up just getting scenes where you're like, but why? Like someone's got to explain this to me, or it does like maybe it'll make sense in 17 episodes. There'll be a long explanation, but it is annoying because you're just mostly left with the question, just like, I don't know, but why?
Yeah, fair enough. Anyways, I digress. On to the episode.
I want to just quickly, you mentioned Earth 2 because we're going to constantly compare them.
We are.
Is there not a thing in Earth 2 where all the electricity is in water or something, or water is electric? So I was just like, oh, this is like Earth 2. The storms here are electrical for some reason.
It's getting, after watching 4 episodes, it's very similar to Earth 2 in a lot of ways. Not all the ways.
No.
But again, the basic bones of the show are very, very similar.
And like occasionally some weird specificity is just like, oh, just like Earth 2. It is interesting watching them not back to back, but having watched both of them. All right, well, let's talk quickly about the first plot of we're going to discuss is Floor's plot. She's been assigned by the president to sneak out of Forthaven with that AC baby they abducted last episode.
So this was weird because I thought, and I don't know if you did as well, I thought that plot was going to be kind of dormant for a while as to what happened in the last episode was they went for this essentially prisoner exchange that went badly. They kept the baby. I thought, oh, well, they're keeping the baby now.
They murdered an AC or two, stole the baby.
But what's weird is immediately now they're going to give the baby back. It's like, couldn't that have just been done in the last episode?
It does raise questions about like, because there's already like bad relationships between the ACs and the colonists. Oh, the colonists don't know about it yet. And then they just made them exponentially worse with this like botched prisoner exchange. But then they're just like immediately like, well, let's fix it. I'm just like, well, I mean, why make it that much worse if you're also just going to like fix it? Like you could have just given it back.
Do you think after 4 episodes, I know we're only talking about episode 3, do you think Tate is a bad president? Because he is, for anyone just kind of catching up, he is essentially a mayor, but they call him a president.
Yeah, if you didn't listen to the last episode.
Yeah, but what we learn is, essentially everything we've learned about him so far is that he keeps making very wildly autocratic at best decisions in the past.
All of them bad mistakes.
Yeah, all of them.
It is, here's the thing, is like, I think he probably is bad at his job, but he does feel sorry for it. I can truly see him, like, he seems to, more than any other character, regret his decisions.
Yes, but as we're going to learn in this, I don't think he has learned so much, because I think it was in episode 2 we learned the reason they kept the baby for a bit was so he could take samples from the baby to understand how the ACs have been able to
have babies
propagate. Yes, yeah. And because they're having issues within the colony that the birth rate has dropped to, I think they said in episode 4, to like 1 person last 4 months had a baby. So it's very, very low, and that's why they want to keep the baby, but done under very not happy circumstances.
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone's just tough to read. I think we're supposed to like him, but realize he's very flawed. I think that's the best I can get out of this show.
Right.
At any rate, Flora's got the baby. She's going to go return to the ACs, and of course, because it is this show, there is one AC who will represent all ACs, because you couldn't have side characters in the show. A character named Rudy, who is he their leader, or is this? It's so hard to tell because this show just has no other characters.
I think he's a de facto leader. The sense I get is there's no real leader, but because they know him and he has spoken before, he is thus the spokesperson.
Yeah. She returns the baby to him. Rudy explains that he in fact was going to double cross them and murder them all last episode. But I was just,
it was a weird thing, huh?
I was
like, why was that needed?
Just to absolve the characters who murdered that AC.
Well,
I guess.
I mean, we can talk about this, but this show loves playing in the gray area. It's a very modern TV sort of thing compared to some of the other shows we've had, where if you watch a show from the 70s, there's a hard push to always make sure that the characters are good and bad, and there's a clear delineation between them. In modern television, everyone wants to play in the gray to varying degrees of success. I would argue the grays in this show are not working very well for the show, because after 4 episodes, I dislike all the characters. There's only so many bad decisions and evil things that you do that you can go, well, it was a misunderstanding. It's like, yeah, but you've done the characters do nothing good ever.
It is the thing where it's just like, our characters are flawed, but it's just like they're flawed 24/7, and they never make the right decision.
Right. So that's the thing. It's like,
it's hard to cheer for them.
Yeah, it's hard to cheer for them because this gray area is very dark.
Yeah. It's just like, no, you're all just incompetent. Like, it's not even that you're evil. You're all just kind of incompetent.
Yeah.
Anyway, they end up spending like half the episode together. She gets to learn all about like, hey, isn't it great? Aren't you AC's great? Thank you for telling me your story about having to wander around this world, I guess. It's still unclear to us. I don't know when they got here. I don't know what their purpose was. I don't quite understand how that's working. The only real thing we get of this is, I believe Rudy says, if I ever see that cast character who murdered my friend, I'm going to murder him on sight. Which is a real setup for later.
Yeah, but the interesting point, more than actually what happens in this episode, is that pretty much is that third of the episode that you've just narrated. Nothing happens. This show has a real issue with characters in like half scenes that are kind of like, here's half a scene, and 3 minutes later you get the other half of the scene, but nothing. There's nothing progresses.
I would say of an hour-long show, Fleur spends 30 minutes with this guy, and we over-described what happened with them.
Yeah, it's like they go out, because here's the thing. Fleur is probably one of the only really redeemable characters in this show. She's always sort of optimistic. She always seems to be has the right intentions, but she also is just there to listen to people. And I was like, this whole scene, it's not like she learned to feel anything for the AC. She already did. So it's like, oh, the character who already was on their side, guess what? She's still on their side. Here's 30 minutes of their conversation.
Yeah, and even that, like, her sympathies to them are mostly there because she's like, I am sympathetic to you now. And I'm like, great, I didn't see you become sympathetic. You just said it out loud, and I guess that's where we are. And anyway,
which characters love doing in the show, too, right?
They do.
They love telling you, she's like, I feel happy now. You go, oh, great, character's happy.
I tell otherwise, but great.
Yeah, because everyone just has this, like, sour look on their face. Everyone has been told the direction is dour.
Yeah.
Dour, soft-spoken, quiet, dour, barely restrained rage for some reason. Every line, they're like, I'm very happy that you've come to see me. It's like, why? Why is every line like that?
I don't know. It's very funny. And I believe her plot wraps up about 30 minutes in when they look up and Rudy's like, Storm or Bruin, better go home. And she goes home.
That's it. Yeah, and didn't you think she was going to get caught?
Yeah, it seemed like something was going to happen. No. But let's talk a bit about what's happening back at Forthaven with this.
Plot B.
Plot B is they're celebrating the end of the whiteout cycle. I guess they're used to like cycles of whiteouts coming, and this one's at an end. And Julius, the maybe religious leader who's
maybe
also
pedophile.
Clearly the bad guy. Oh yeah, definitely a sexual predator. He announces abruptly, he's like, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, up on the ship, I was talking to this Nobel Prize winning astroclimologist, and he gave me all his papers because he said something was going on down here with the whiteout, and he did a bunch of research. I don't know what any of it is, but I forgot to mention it when I got here.
So here, yeah, I'll mention a couple of things. The first is that I think we as a viewer are supposed to find him charming. So we're supposed to, I think, be unsure because we know he's bad, but also he's very charming. I don't find him charming at all, so he just is an annoying character to me.
Right.
That's aside. This whole plot line is going to become, they get a bunch of mathematical equations that they hope will give them the solution to the whiteouts. However, I don't know how that would work at all. Let's say,
I would argue they don't even know it's going to give them solutions. I think he just says he found something, and they're like, oh, what? I don't know. It's on these papers, and they just stand around being like, huh.
So I guess what doesn't make sense to me about the math is that the way it is presented is that what you would think would be sort of like a like cutting the wire sort of thing. They have a problem that they need to fix, and this is going to give them the magical answer. So they're going to get the answer is northwest, and they know where to put the wall, or I don't know. That's a bad example, but like that's not how that's how it's presented. But in terms of the reality of this world, I don't know how this is going to help them at all. And spoiler, it doesn't really help them.
No, I mean, at best, the best I could figure out was like maybe this guy's math was telling them that something worse was coming, and they implied that that's like he said something bad might happen, which I'm like, okay, if it has to do with Whiteouts, it means another Whiteout's coming. But you would think this is like solving this thing or figuring out what he was working on would provide you, what you're saying is like a solution, like a way to predict them, some sort of thing to do. And it doesn't seem to be the case. It just seems to be like solve this math problem and discover a bigger whiteout is coming.
It's not, and not to flog this to death. It's not as if they were looking at blueprints they couldn't figure out, and what the blueprints was a laser that was going to shoot out and block the smoke. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's and again, they're going to be like, it's numbers, and what the numbers tell us is there's a bigger storm than we thought was coming. Well, wow, glad we spent time on that.
I believe there's literally a line where they're like, should we work on these numbers? And someone's like, maybe we should, because we better look into it. We don't want to end up like San Francisco, get earthquaked right into the ocean.
Yeah. That's right. That was that little bit of world building they added in a line. You're like, oh, things are not going well in San Francisco.
And of course, there's only one person who can solve these problems. It's the child prodigy / drug dealer Tipper.
Yeah. / pirate radio host.
Yeah, he's now started a pirate radio station this episode.
Yeah. Right. And here's what's weird about the pirate radio. So he has a station that he puts on whenever he feels like it, what it seems like. But everyone just has their radios turned.
There's no other radio station.
Yeah, there's no other radio station, and everyone has it turned to that on just in case
Tipper happens to tune in.
Yeah, it's just, anyways.
Well, he can't even set a playlist because he does it all on vinyl. Like,
yeah.
He's so obsessed with vinyl records sound so good, the popping and the scratching. I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, it's supposed to be that like annoying.
It is annoying.
Hipster thing, but it's annoying for a different reason, just because it's just so stupid.
It doesn't make any, like, I'm like, great, you want to play records on your show? Fine. But why wouldn't you also have the technology? Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah. But the point is, Stella, she has a great line that she says, she goes, I'm a neurologist, not a mathematician. Like, she's classic Bones. But she realizes she can't do the math. This guy's apparently so smart, so she's going to somewhat forcibly recruit him to do the math.
Yeah.
But they make a deal, right?
Yeah, he's going to come in and work on the math. There's a bit of a back and forth. Like, he doesn't want to do it, and like they have a bit of an argument. There's a really weird scene where they bring him in to do it, and he's kind of like, I don't want to do it. And he's just like, are you Jewish? Hey, are you Jewish? And I'm like, why is he asking everyone if they're Jewish?
That was weird. Yeah, because he said he says to her, what's her last name? Stella's last name is
Issen.
And he's like, is that Jewish? And she's like, my husband was Jewish. She's like, oh, are you Jewish? What about you? It's like, it was such a... I didn't mean
reason. Anything. It didn't mean it didn't go anywhere. I'm just like, why is this character asking everyone this suddenly?
You're like, classic Irish.
It was so weird, and he kind of agrees to do it, but then he like starts needling old Cass is supposed to like look after him, and he's just like,
yeah.
And Tipper misunderstands. He's like, I thought this was how our friendship worked. I thought I could needle you, but that man you murdered last week, and you'd think it was funny. Cass does not find it funny. He roughs him up.
Now, I think you mentioned it before, but is Cass the worst character on this show?
They're all bad.
But is he the worst?
I don't think he's the worst. He's not the worst for me anyway. He's a bad character for sure.
Yeah.
At least the actor is likable.
He is a likable actor. I'll give him that. But he's a character who's prone to violence.
Yes.
Bad decisions.
Yes. But that's all the characters.
He also has that horrible thing around his neck where he has to pine for Fleur at all times.
Yeah, that's a pain.
Anyway.
I don't know. But yes, he roughs up Tipper for like, and it was very funny. I'm like, yeah, Tipper, he's going to beat you up if you like really rile him up about that man he's sad about killing.
Yeah.
But Tipper runs back to his radio station, gets on, and then cries into the mic about his 5 or 7 or 12 Irish sisters he left at home to die because he was a child that got shipped off to Carpathia.
I think it's only 2, but...
No, there's 5 of them.
Is there really?
There's minimum 5 sisters.
Well, he's Irish.
Well, that's it. It's just like such a weird stereotype to throw in there. And then everyone's like, oh, no, he has a history of mental illness we've never seen. We better go make sure he doesn't commit suicide.
Oh, sorry, and I don't know if you mentioned there anything. His whole all the characters have this sort of a character point, which is he just wants to be able to go into that thing that memory thing,
the deep brain visualizer.
Yeah, so he can see his sisters again.
Well, they negotiate like, you come back, solve the math, and will let you go into the brain scan and think about your sisters for a while.
Don't you think this should just be readily available for people if they all want it so badly?
I mean, I don't know what they're getting out of it either. I guess it's just like highly intensified third person narrative.
And also, for the millionth time we mentioned Earth 2, isn't this not exactly like the Earth 2 thing?
Oh yeah,
their virtual reality
their
thing?
VR. It's very similar. Anyway, he finally looks over the research and announces, "Hey, a whiteout's coming. It's gonna be 5 times bigger than ever. We got to go to level 3 lockdown." Like that's the end of this long drawn out thing.
Yeah, and I think the third plot line, we're going to get 2 new characters.
Well, there's a few more things.
Oh, sorry.
Before we move on to like plotline 5 or 6 of this episode, I just wanted to note that the president's like, "Well, I better give an emergency address about this like lockdown that's coming," and Julius is like, "Hey, can I also be in that emergency address?" And the president's like, "What? Like, what do you have to say?" He's like, "Nothing. I promise I won't say a prayer." And he's like, "Okay, you can do an emergency address too." Immediately does a prayer.
Yeah. Again,
why are you letting this man talk? You don't trust him. And then B, like, the second he does it, he just does the opposite of what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, and I just don't think this character or the tension they're trying to have between him and other characters is working the way they think it's working, because we know he's bad.
Like, they're not hiding that.
They're not hiding it. Yeah, so it's like you know he's bad. So every time he wants to do something, you're like, well,
don't let him do it. You guys know he's bad.
Yeah, and
they're like,
yeah.
Just this one time.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
You were bad.
And then he's like, I can't believe he did that prayer. That, by the way, doesn't change anything. So it doesn't matter if he did or didn't.
Doesn't matter.
Like everything, it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. So let him do his prayer.
I guess it's just supposed to be building up his cachet, but it's just so funny. I'm like we talked about. I'm like, he just showed up. Nobody knows who he is. You guys are elevating him now. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about those other characters who show up. Finally, because this is the thing that I'm deciding is true of this show, Outcasts, is like, now we need 2 new characters who we have to really worry about, even though we've never seen them have a bunch of characters we don't care about.
It's the same thing from the first episode, but at least in the first episode, we didn't know who was going to be our main characters yet. But in this, they introduce I didn't catch the name, but it's a woman who...
She's a
nurse who used to have a relationship with Cass, we're going to learn.
Yeah, her name is Trix.
Trix, oh, that's right. Trix, and she's getting married, excuse me, to a new guy who, I don't know, he's like, is he an expeditionary?
No, he seems to be some sort of fix-it man. He's not expeditionary, he's just some sort of fix-it man who fixes things around. And they're getting married soon. Cass is not invited to the wedding, though this Trix lady still just hangs out with him on the regular.
Yeah. Yeah, they try to have it that they maybe still have feelings, or at least have some sort of odd relationship, but it's just weird to the way it's done.
It's mostly she's there to be like, we never got married because your heart was somewhere else, but where could it be? Possibly floor, everybody? What do you think?
Yeah.
It was like, yes,
he only mentions it every episode.
Yes, we all know, thank you. Anyway, with this big storm coming in, unfortunately, the fiancé has to go out and fix the Earth beacon before the storm gets in.
Yeah.
So he heads out with, so far, the show's only acknowledged gay character, who they will then promptly murder immediately. I'm just like, why did you, like, you're so inclusive the way you introduced a brand new character who's gay and then immediately killed him. Very cool, you guys.
Yep.
Very woke of you.
Yeah.
It was, do you know this? There's a TV trope.
I do,
kill
yeah.
your gays. As soon as this happened, it's like, oh, this is such a bad show sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, they obviously get caught out when the weather goes bad in the whiteout. Cass is asked by Trix to go save them, and of course he goes out there to save them. And they don't save the one guy, but Cass finds the fiancé. And he's walking back through the storm. They're getting zapped by static electricity in the storm the whole time.
Yeah, because it's a static electricity sandstorm.
They collapse in the middle of the storm, and then that AC Rudy emerges from the sandstorm because his genetically enhanced abilities allow him not to be affected. And he's forced to rescue Cass and this guy. And he doesn't murder Cass like he promised, because Cass kept muttering Fleur's name because he's in love with her.
But aside from that, he takes the 2 gentlemen who have been caught in the whiteout to some sort of industrial, sort of like container house.
Yeah,
sort
it's
of
like
thing.
a shipping container that's out there.
But I thought they lived in caves. These guys. It seems like they have some structures.
No. That's Forthaven's.
Oh, it
thing.
is? Oh,
because
okay.
At some point they talk about when they're like out there, like, oh, we can always go hide in that expeditionary bunker.
Oh,
or whatever.
I missed that bit of whisper.
Yeah, unrelated to the AC. AC still live in caves.
Right.
Anyway, that sort of like is his whole thing, and the whiteout ends. There's some structural damage and some fatalities, but it doesn't seem like it was too bad. Trix and this guy get married in the hospital, and Cass is even invited. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Great, a wedding. For these two characters who like
Yeah.
you have no
well, that's the thing.
emotions
They've
for.
introduced characters that like no one would care. There's no weight to any of this.
And like they let I think it wraps up with that they show was it Tipper gets to go and see his sisters in the DBV. But my favorite part of the ending was this all wraps up. We've talked about the whole episode, and then the President Tate walks up to Julius and says, "Hey, you want to see the General Council? I know you're evil, and you did that prayer that I told you not to. So why don't you join the General Council?" Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and we don't know what the General Council is.
No,
Because it all everything's
clearly not elected.
Yeah, not elected because it seems like Tate is the president and he makes all the decisions anyway. So maybe he's just being nice.
Advisors, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very silly. I'm just like, okay, sure, why not?
Well,
This guy
because they
can
need to
join.
have him involved. That's why.
Because he's so powerful, we can't not have him involved. It's just like we've seen no evidence of any of this, but whatever. Anyway, that's how it kind of wraps up. Oh, that's not true. I forgot. There's one last note here. There's there's so much stuff that happens right at the end of this episode. I believe Floor has a conversation with the president and says, "Hey, maybe you should tell everyone
That's
in town
right,
that
yeah.
the ACs are out there wandering around and not dead like you murdered them." And he's like, "Good idea. I'll do a radio broadcast tonight." And I guess now everybody knows the ACs are out there.
Well, it plays to something that I think they touch upon a theme on this, and I think it's a good theme, but I just don't think this show executes it very well, which is about like second chances. And I think there's this idea on this show that sort of like the sins of our forefathers or previous generations because of their own hubris or humanity's hubris. Like planet Earth is clearly dying. They're getting a second chance to this planet, and maybe they're making the same mistakes, and maybe they have to make apologies for these ecological disasters, and they have to try to strive to be better. That's all interesting ideas, about our desired values pitted with, our own prejudices or the extremes of this hostile planet. But it's not really what this show is. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like, there's an
if that's
interesting
what they
idea there.
want, they're not landing it.
Right. And maybe they don't, but there just seems to be a hint of that. And I go, that's an interesting idea. There's an interesting concept there, but I don't think that's what they're doing.
It's interesting. I think you're right. There's a level of like they did some desperate things to get here and get set up, and now they have to answer for them. But they're doing it's just not clear. Like it's so muddled because everything's a mystery and everyone's whispering that it's tough to figure out what they're after.
Well, is the show about like surviving in the frontier, or is it like the interworking of politics on a frontier nation?
I don't know.
Is it
yeah.
both?
It's probably both. That's probably what they want. But then there's also other stuff about past sins. You're right, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to really touch on what it's going for. Also, Jordan, in Ghost News.
I forgot Ghost News is a big deal in this show. Remember, you sort of joked about it, but it's going to be a theme. It's going to be a thread through the show.
Big Ghost News. This episode's Ghost News.
I wish we always had Ghost News.
The president finds a cup outside of the wall. When he picks it up, it's a ghost cup and disappears in his hand.
Yeah, it's a cup from his children. What we start seeing, and we're going to see more in the next episode, is that these visions he's been having, or voices and noises he's been hearing, they're sort of manifesting themselves more in corporeal form.
Well, let's just talk about next episode's Ghost News then.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
we'll get it over with.
That was a tease for Ghost News.
In the next episode, he will like be seeing glimpses of his like sons out of the corner of his eye, and like their ghost handprints will be on like things, and the actual like it won't affect the plot at all. But at the very end of the episode, he'll leave the walls of Forthaven and go sit outside, and he'll start talking to his sons, who will then materialize very spookily next to him, and he'll be like, "I know I'm insane, but I'm happy to have you here. Why don't you go play?" And then the kids go like play in the dirt.
Yeah, and I actually think it was a sort of sweet moment because
It is a sweet moment.
But what right after I was like, oh, that's actually pretty well done. What kind of annoyed me was what I realized is him and what's her name, Stella, essentially have the same character, which is just two people, and what their point is like, I miss my kids. And it's just like, come
it does
on, guys.
crossover. I mean, I will say it's better. I think it works better for President Tate than poor
I do.
Stella. Like
I
they're
agree.
really not doing a great job with her side. But I also think it's very funny because they like so explicitly were like have the president say, "I know I'm going insane, but that's okay. I'm happy to see you." I'm like, okay, he's not going insane. There are ghosts on this planet.
Yeah, well, that was what's weird because he's had essentially tangible evidence that it's not just in his imagination.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's another thing. They're going for the subtle thing where I think they want to like tease, like, is he insane or are there ghosts? But they just lean so hard one way that you're like, oh well, he's clear. Like I can tell you're trying to dupe me into thinking he's insane, so I know they're ghosts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're ghosts.
Anyway, let's move on. Since I've teased episode 4, here's the IMDb summary for episode 4.
An exit door's been found damaged and open on the lower south section.
So he's out there on the loose in Forthaven.
You knew he was a danger. That's why you had him put in the secure centre.
I knew he had a history of aggressive behaviour, but nothing like this.
A call's gone out to all pass officers for a citywide search. Public opinion about the ACs is still confused. We just don't want to cause a panic.
I'd say an aggressive AC and a badly wounded woman is every reason to panic.
Which is why we want to bring him in quickly and quietly. Minimum force.
We should be all right. Cleaner.
We don't know. Medical staff are doing everything they can.
Let's just focus on the job.
A troubled AC enters Forthaven and attacks a citizen. Floor and Cass struggle to contain the situation. The expeditionaries make a stunning discovery.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to mention something that sort of will come back a little bit in this episode with this sort of historical elements of this planet. But Luke, did they mention how long these structures have been there? How long has Forthaven been there? Have they mentioned that?
It's as long as there's like 10 to 12 years.
Okay, because it seems to me, and it might just be a design look, but it seems like the houses or the building structures, they seem really beaten up, don't they?
Yeah, they kind of have a very ancient sandstone-y look.
Yes, it almost looks like something from the Middle East in that style. And also, but those structures are old. And these are only a decade old, so are they just making them with really bad materials, or is it just we supposed to go, there's just the wear and tear is really...
I think it's supposed to be... I've my headcanon, I've chalked it up to, like, they just built a bunch of cement buildings as soon as I got there, because that's the, like, construction equipment they bought, and the weathering is from all the storms that come.
Right.
And what we'll see in this episode, because there's a big chase sequence through this town, I realize the town is 80% shipping containers.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I will say, separate of this, I do think the lighting is great in this show. For a show that's clearly shot in studio most of the time, I think the lighting is really good. They do a good juxtaposition.
The sets look amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I am
the
shocked.
Indoors versus the outdoors and stuff. I think it looks great.
I'm always shocked when they go outside. I'm just like, so much time and effort went into this, and it feels lived in and real, but then we only have 6 characters, so it feels empty at the same time. So it's just, like, I always get disoriented from the show, because I'm like,
the background characters are clearly background characters. They're existing, but you don't feel like they're existing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so this episode, this new AC comes down. His name's Elijah, and you may recognize him, listener.
Nonzo Inozi?
Yes. He of course, was in Game of Thrones, and most recently is in that Netflix Sweet Tooth show.
Yep.
And he's there because he was injured in the whiteout, and they sort of bring him into town because he's hurt, but the president's quite worried about him, so he locks him away in lockup instead of getting medical treatment for him.
In classic Tate, they're sort of like, he needs medical attention. He's like, yes, but I'm more scared about what he can do over his medical attention, so we're going to let him suffer a little bit in that cell of sorts.
Yeah, and over the course of the episode, we'll come to realize it's because, like, I thought it was just because he's worried about ACs in general, but, like, Tate knows this AC personally, it turns out.
Yeah. He's got what would you say is post-traumatic stress at best?
Yeah, this guy definitely has post-traumatic stress. I mean, it is apparently what was happening is, and I'm now more confused by the timeline. I thought these guys were sent in advance of the...
I thought so too.
But now it looks like the ACs were there with Tate when they arrived, because this particular AC, I guess, had some genetic issues when he was, like, created. And essentially the problem is, I'll just give it away here, is his flight or fight response, he has no flight response. He only fights. So if you scare him, he punches you in the face.
Yeah. Well, I think what it is, and maybe I'm wrong, is there was an original group of them that came. They set everything up. Then the traditional humans, I don't know what you would call them.
Yeah. The colonists showed up.
The colonists show, excuse me. They show up. Then they made more.
Maybe that's what it is.
That's what I thought, but maybe the timelines are wrong.
It's hard to know. Like, I always assumed they were there first, but now it seems like they were there simultaneously.
Yeah. Regardless, Tate was the one instigating, if not the direct science experiments on him. He was there overseeing them.
Absolutely. And because this one AC had this genetic defect, it seems like Tate tried to fix that, but that fixing it involved, like, terrible torture to this man.
Yeah, I don't know how they were fixing it, but it just seemed like there was it almost seemed like it was meant to systematically break him down. So I don't know how they were fixing him, but they were doing some tests that I think they try to lead you to believe that good intentions were there, but I don't know how they
they seem to be zapping his brain with electricity, and there's like a red light, green light system built into it for some reason. It's very 5 lights, 4 lights.
Yeah.
But we never learn any more about it, so it's unclear how zapping his brain until he had post-traumatic stress would help a man.
Isn't it funny when you there's shades of another show or another episode of a television show that's much, much better than the one you're watching, and not to anyone's fault, but just you can't help but realize how pale the thing you are watching.
Yeah, it doesn't help the situation,
Yeah.
that's for sure. Anyway, Elijah, of course, when he's locked up, immediately recognizes the president and is like having like huge like breakdowns. He's so freaked out to
Wouldn't
see
you,
him.
as Tate, wouldn't you avoid the situation knowing that there's some sketchy past? Wouldn't you be like, I won't go down personally?
Yeah, and
But
like,
he does.
and he doesn't seem to be telling anyone that he knows this guy directly. Though later everyone seems to be aware maybe he does. Like, so I'm just not sure what information everyone has.
Yeah.
All that matters is Elijah manages to break out of his cell, and he disappears into the maze of corridors that is, like, I guess this is the original ship they landed in the middle of town, and now it works as City Hall. So he's, like, running around the ship.
Which, again, I'll mention, I quite like the look of it. Not because it's particularly different, but I like the lighting in it, and I like how different it is to the other structures we see. You can clearly tell this was built at a different time, at a different material, and for different purpose.
It's a good idea. I like the idea of like, oh, we landed our colony ship, and now it serves as a building in our town. So it's quite different from everything else, but also is in this town. Like, I like
the design's
concept.
good.
And as he's running around the corridors, he bumps into a friendly janitor.
Yeah. He's basically, he escapes. I don't know how he like kicks his way out of the prison. But anyways, he gets away. He's like essentially like gathering his breath. This very nice lady takes pity on him and was like, "You're okay." But here's the weird thing about it. So you think she's just sort of like an innocent bystander. She's like, "You look hurt. Let me kind of clean you up. I'll help you." But then she's like, "Hey, you're one of those ACs, aren't you?"
Yeah, I heard about you.
I was like, "Oh, she did hear about that? Like, what do the people know or not know?"
Well, we know from the last episode that the president made an announcement that they exist.
Right.
But it's a huge step away from like yesterday you didn't know these things existed. Today you do. And the first person you bump into on shift as a janitor, you're like, hey, you must be one of those things I heard about.
It's like the government announces, hey guys, we've been hiding it for all this time. Aliens do exist. And then you meet a new person at work the next day and go, you one of those aliens?
Ah, yeah, I haven't seen you before.
I haven't seen you before. It might be an alien.
It was, and she's so into it. She's like, what an exciting trait. You're like a celebrity to me.
Yeah, a man who is clearly not in a good place, is bleeding.
Yeah, hurt quite badly.
Yeah, and you're like, you seem like a good guy. And it does not go well.
Yeah, well, she like offers to clean him up, and when she goes to like wipe one of his things, he's like, "Oh, don't touch my owies," and she does,
and he
blacks out. And when he comes to, she's just been beaten to a pulp.
Yeah, like really beaten.
But it's fine. They eventually find her, and they're like, "Oh, she's gonna be okay. We'll bring her up to the hospital." And she's just like, "It's not his fault. You didn't see him. He was like quite scared."
She's a very kind person.
She's very forgiving. Although my favorite part is she's very forgiving. She's in this hospital, and Julius, the bad guy, walks in. He's like, "Hey, listen, would you help me stir up hatred for the ACs? Because he just beat you up. Would you like to come on my radio show, and we'll just be like, let's kill the ACs together?" And she's like, No, I'm good, thanks. I think he's okay. And and he gets so mad. He's like, well, you're a jerk. I'm leaving.
Again, we're not really sure what his intentions are.
He's so blatant, too. He's so blatantly like, let's rile up hate. Like, it's not even subtext. It's like text. And I'm like, oh, so we're not worrying about subtlety now for this one scene?
And it also goes nowhere, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, you won't do it? Okay, bye.
This show, you know the old sketch thing I'm sure we mentioned before, Luke. You know the old yes and. You want to keep scenes going. You don't want to kill them. This show does the opposite at all times.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Oh, okay. End of scene.
Anyway, Cass and Flora, of course, put on the case of finding this guy, and they're basically running around the city looking for him, and
they come to the landing memorial.
They're like, I was more confused by this too. They mentioned some guy's name,
Patrick Baxter.
And I'm like, so did someone else come who wasn't an AC before everybody else?
I wrote the same thing. So they mention, what they say is, hey, this is the landing memorial, so the original pod or something that landed, and they said, Patrick Baxter, the first person to set foot on the planet. So he's, I don't think, an AC.
Yeah, I that's what I think. I was also like, not an AC. Because in this episode, they talk about, it's like, I think Kat someone says, whoa, ACs are really like us, huh? I'm like, yes, they are. They're exactly the same.
Yeah.
What do you mean they're like us?
I think we're going to learn that there was a group of humans that originally came. Then they sent the ACs to test things. Then the ACs, I don't know. Then the ACs started acting up. Then they got rid of them. And then they brought in new colonists. I don't know.
At any rate,
it is weird because what does any of this matter?
They do this world building where they give you more information that makes no sense in context.
All you need to know is the name Patrick Baxter.
Yeah, very important. Doesn't come up the rest of the episode.
No.
For 7 episodes from now, though, you'll want to remember.
Yeah, but while Cass is just like going on about the history that doesn't matter, Fleur's actually doing her job and looking for the guy, and he's right there. He's right in front of them.
They get in a chase. It's a classic thing where jumps over like 2 rooftops and doesn't quite make it, so she's dangling off the side. And then, of course, because Elijah's not a bad guy, he rescues her. And then it has to be this whole scene where they're like, we got to take him down. And they're like, no, he saved me. It's like, he's like, I just want to leave. And they're like, okay.
There's a scene right here where he rescues her and they're sitting and talking, and he gets her to promise something. And Luke, watched the scene 4 times, and I still don't know what he got her to promise because they whispered so quietly. I put the volume up to full max, and I listened 4 times. And I still don't know what he got her to promise.
The promise was that she wouldn't bring him back to Tate. That's all. Nothing. And like Cass doesn't want to do it, and then he's like, okay, I'll do it. And we're now in this, like, I guess, tete-a-tete where they're like, oh, this guy's afraid of Tate, so let's not bring him back. Maybe we should let him go. But while this has all been going on, Stella Isson and her daughter Lily, who we met last time,
what a plot, are
having the most exciting plot. I believe they've moved in together now. Their relationship has gotten better enough. They've moved in together. And
well, it was in one of the previous episodes. She said, "Why don't you move in with me?"
Yeah. And so they finally move in together. So like a day has happened. They move in, and at breakfast that morning, Stella was just like, turns to her daughter. She's like, "When I got to this planet, the first pebble I picked up, I made into a necklace to give you. Here's this pebble necklace I made for you." And Lily's like, "No thanks.
Yeah,
I don't like it."
And she is heartbroken.
She's destroyed. She's like, "But I found a rock on the ground."
Yeah, there's this, again, there's something...
It's supposed to be sweet, but doesn't work.
There's something here about the idea that this parent who's been waiting for her child for years and years and made difficult decisions and sacrifices on behalf of her child, even though her child might be angry at her. She did all this, and then the child is now grown up, and they are having this weird, tumultuous back and forth. There's something interesting here, but I don't think they give anything to Stella other than that, because all we know about Stella is she cares about her daughter. It's the only character trait we have, and they don't have enough time for it, and I don't think the show handles nuance well enough. So you just know it's not important.
I mean, it's an interesting idea. This is a lot of psychological damage about being abandoned is the idea, but the episodes just are like, oh, now they're getting along again. Oh, now they're not getting along again. Like, there's no like we should go to therapy or we should talk about these things. They just give up all the time.
This plot line is is 2 scenes, which is this scene, and then she goes like, I'm unhappy, and then her mom's like, maybe you should go live somewhere else. So she's like, I think I will. Then she goes to move in with Tipper.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Well, it's totally random. I know, the man she'd never met before, but it's because what happens is after she turns down the necklace, I guess Lily's mad, so Lily steals confidential information from her mom that says, I don't know when they had time to write up this memo, but it's a memo saying an AC is on the loose terrorizing Forthaven. She goes to pirate radio station, says, hey, Tipper, I found this in your mailbox. And Tipper just opens it up and is like, well, I'll just read this on air, I guess.
Yeah, he's like, you know how I was just playing old vinyl records before? Now I'm giving you updates.
Well, now I'm a shit disturber because the man, you got to stick it to the man. And he basically just like does what Julius wanted, which is make everybody in town hate ACs.
Yeah. Don't you think this would have made more sense if it was Julius that had stolen the documents and given it?
100%. Like, why did Lily care? How did Lily know who this man was?
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, then like Stella goes and like kicks in the door of Tipper's place and is like, where'd you get that secret memo from? If you don't tell me, I'm going to snap this record in half. And that breaks him. He's like, I can't afford to lose that record. It was your daughter. I'm ratting her out immediately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it was me, I'd have been like, it was your daughter. What do I care? I didn't promise her anything.
Yeah. And anyway, that's what happens. Then her and her daughter have a heart-to-heart about how you shouldn't steal my things. And they're like, well, let's not work on this relationship anymore. Let's move out of our house together. Yep. And Lily just goes. She's like walks into Tipper's house. She's like, I live here now. And Tipper's like, okay.
Yeah, he's like, all right, bed's over there.
Do you think it's going to be a thing where Tipper loves the mom, but the daughter loves Tipper? Is it going to be that kind of love triangle?
No.
I feel like that's where they're headed.
It's a gross love triangle.
It's going to be weird. Anyway, whatever.
I actually forgot they were involved.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny. Let's move on from that. Flora decides she's going to go outside of the fence to try to get some help for this for Elijah the AC. And basically, Rudy had told her, shoot a flare in the air, I'll pop by and talk to you. And they basically are like, come in, I'm going to get you into Forthaven, which apparently is very easy to walk into with an AC.
Yeah, that's what's become very clear in this episode.
They go in there and they're like, let's get him out of here. But it's very easy to walk an AC into Forthaven, but it's very hard to walk 2 of them out.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the thing. It shouldn't be easy at all because we've learned that people almost never leave.
That's what they keep saying, and then like people just keep wandering around like it's nothing. Whatever. Anyway, like they're like, we got to get him out of here. And Cass is like, well, why don't I set up a distraction? But what they don't know is that night, while Fleur left, Cass was hanging out with Elijah, and Elijah heard a clap of thunder, which caused his fight reflex to kick in, and he punched Cass in the face. So now Cass isn't sure if he should be allowed to go free.
Yeah, and they have sort of Cass, we've learned over 4 episodes, has a loyalty to Tate, perhaps because of something. Maybe Tate had given him a second chance or something.
It does seem like
that.
he had a violent past that Tate looked past or something.
Yeah, or something on his record, and he's given him this position, so he feels indebted to him in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always his push and pull. But again, the show just doesn't know how to
It
land it at all.
All the theory is good.
Yeah.
All the practice is bad.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so you have this thing. It's like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna go with Tate, or is he gonna go with Fleur, who he loves? We've mentioned a million times.
And even somewhere, if you like,
the answer is go with the pretty girl.
Yeah. If you squint through all like the lack of explanation, you can see where Cass might be like, oh, maybe this guy does need help, and we shouldn't let him go, because what we're seeing is he does have a real mental issue with this fight or flight response thing. And I think what we're supposed to get is Cass recognizes he truly needs help, so letting him go is not the right answer. But how it manifests is he's like, I'm going to create a distraction. He walks right into the president's office and is like, I know where the AC is. Let's set up a big trap to trank him and catch him and treat him. And everyone's like, sounds good. And then Jack the expeditionary shows up out of nowhere and he's just like, I'll help too, but I'll bring a gun.
Yeah, because this is the thing. So basically you have this thing where he's pretending he's going to get them out, but at the same time he's just wants to capture him. But there was many easier ways. If all you have to do is trank him, why don't you just go back to the room, just jab him?
Yeah.
Done. And then the guys come in and go like, yeah, now that he's knocked out, we're taking him out. Why you have to set up a way where there's snipers on the roof and stuff? There's no way this is going to go well.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's so funny because basically Cass goes back and says, I set up the distraction. It's time to go. And Elijah looks at him and says, I forgive you. I know you've just double-crossed us. I'm like, okay, sure. Why not? Cass always needs to be forgiven.
Yeah. And later in the episode, too, what's her face? Fleur's going to forgive him, too. I thought it was going to be a scene where they have a scene where, and this is jumping ahead a little bit.
That's the big thing is he constantly saying, she's never going to forgive me. But.
Yeah, and they have this scene where you actually thought there was going to be something interesting where she was like, I know we're partners. I know we have this history, but you've lied to me right to the face, and you've wrecked this. And there's something interesting. But she's like, I know you've done blah, blah, blah. You've wrecked this. I forgive you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Back to status quo.
Back to status quo. I know, it's insane. But yeah, they do this. They get the drop on, Elijah walks out. 75 people shoot him with tranks, but I guess because he's an AC, he doesn't go down immediately. Just some random background extra walks past Elijah. Elijah, pushes him out of the way, and Jack's like, well, that's too violent. Pulls out a sniper rifle and, just blasts the guy in the face.
Yeah, it kills him.
And he's like, well, he's dead now. I'm like, well, I guess you just didn't want, once again, a whole episode about a character who will never come back again.
Yeah.
And I guess where this is kind of setting us up is after this all wraps up, everyone apologizes to each other. Everything's forgiven for this terrible, stupid thing. But Julius finds Jack having a shower somewhere, and he's just like, hey, Jack, I really like the way you murdered that man. What about you and me get together, overthrow this government? And Jack's like, that sounds pretty good. Let's overthrow the government.
Yeah.
It's so not subtle for a show that's dying, that is killing us with subtlety. The Julius character is the most over the top villain.
Well, there's a line right around here that one of the characters, and I don't remember exactly, but one of the characters says this. They go, "We do what we have to survive." And I remember, and my note is, do they though? Is that what this show is about? Is this about these struggles of a frontier town? Because they're not really doing what they have to survive.
They're making the worst choice possible.
Yeah. Anyway, it just seemed like the line just seemed like if you had to break down to the episode to one sentence, that would be it. I'm like, but not really.
Yeah, it's very weird. Anyway, there's this weird side thing that happens for Jack, the expeditionary, in this episode, and how he somehow gets he gets called into his boss's office. I guess Stell's not his boss, but he's like, you shouldn't have killed that guy, and he's just like, wait, before you ream me out for murdering that man, well, you sent the expeditionaries out to dig a hole. And well, we did. Look what I found in the hole. And she's like, all's forgiven.
Yeah.
Because what's in the hole, Jordan?
What's in the hole is it's a rock with a partial skeleton, which is a human jawbone that is
fossilized into
this
rock.
Yeah. And so they now go, oh no, there's been humans were here possibly thousands of years ago.
Yes,
and
it's tens of thousands of years old.
And that throws everything we know into turmoil, but I don't know how that changes anything. I'm like,
I mean, it's a big it's a shocker for sure. Like, I guess humans have been here before, but it is funny because it's so on the nose that basically Stella has this conversation with the president. It's like, it's thousands of years old. How did a human skull get here? Blah 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 blah. And the scene ends with she turns to him and says, "This changes everything." I'm like, cool, cool, you guys. You sure know how to land these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, now we have another what will this mystery hold for us?
Well, but the thing is, did you care about this mystery as a viewer watching 4 episodes? Because it's not like it changed what we knew of the planet. We didn't know anything about the planet.
Yeah. Well, this is a pilot reveal, not a episode 3 reveal.
Right. Well, episode 4.
Episode 4. Yeah. Episode 4 of a 9 episode show is like halfway through. It's like, oh, by the way, ancient humans live on this planet.
Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb. I don't think they're gonna explain this in any great detail by the end of this series.
Yeah, this is for season 2 for sure.
Yeah.
And I know we've covered most of this episode. That's pretty much all the plots. But I do want to talk about one side note here that I thought was very, very funny to me. Is obviously, Julius is kicking around these 2 episodes, gaining power, doing whatever, playing the game, whatever he does. But there's this side thing that's happening here where what we know about him, as we've said, is he's an enjoyer of grooming teenagers.
That's true.
We know this about him. This is the one established character trait.
Yeah.
And as the episode ends, he walks into Stella's office to tell her, it's like, oh, I thought you should know your daughter's moved in with Tipper. And she's just like, oh, thank you for telling me. And he's just like, listen, I'm talking to your daughter a lot. She really trusts me. She really listens to me. And I think that's good for your relationship. And Stella's like, thank you. That's so good. Thank you for telling me. I'm just like, if a child molester walked into your house and was like, I'm hanging out with your daughter.
Yeah.
We're having a great time. She really trusts me. Stella has no red flag. She's just like, sounds good to me. Have a nice time.
I'll give this. She hasn't been a parent in quite some time, so maybe she's a little rusty.
Maybe. It was such a funny ending to the episode. It was just like, this one character whose only character trait was he groomed a teenage girl is now walking around being like, your daughter, that same age teenage girl, I'm really spending a lot of time with her. I wanted to come here and tell you that because I thought you'd like to know.
He is, I think, maybe the worst written of the characters because the character needs nuance and subtlety and to keep the expectations of the audience changing constantly so that you don't know what to believe with him. But we just know he's evil all the way through. And even the worst about it is we don't ever actually get to see him do anything evil. He just kind of mentions that he's going to be doing evil things.
Yeah, I'm going to do some evil later.
Yeah.
I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes.
And it's very funny. It just made me laugh so hard. I'm like, you guys chose what is a very difficult character trait to give a character. And now you're just like, no, it's fine. Everyone's cool with it.
Yeah.
We've all forgotten and moved on.
Yeah. Oh, and there was one other thing, too, where you mentioned the council, whatever they're called. And
General Council.
Yeah, General Council. And Julius goes up to Tate and's like, hey, I heard you guys at a meeting. Why was I not at it? And he's like, and Tate goes, it was a security meeting. It had nothing to do with you. And he's like, well, I'd like to be at those meetings. He's like, well, you won't. And he's like, oh, I'd like to. And they go, agree to disagree. Scene ended.
Yeah. It's just like,
what?
So weird. So funny. Anyway, I mean, I don't have any real final notes on these episodes.
Well, I mean,
we've covered so much.
Well, I feel the same way as I did after 2 episodes, which is I don't know what this show, at its highest aspirations, what is this show trying to be? And I was thinking about it this morning, and it's not really the sort of moralism of Star Trek, and it's not the sort of fun space cowboys of Star Wars. I think what they're trying to do is be very much like the reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're going for, the sort of somewhat political tension, the religious aspects that might be interfering in said politics, the sexual dynamics of the characters. I think they're trying to play with all that, but it's just not really working. And I don't even know if I put my finger on why it's not working, but maybe it's what you said before. It's too much tell and maybe not enough show, maybe?
Yeah, it's just, I always feel like if it feels like the beat sheet, is right. All the things they want to do are interesting beats. But the beat sheet was turned into dialogue or something. Because it's like everyone just says the thing it's like you're supposed to feel at this moment. It's not like it was worked into an interesting scene. It was just like, I say this now, and so that's what our next thing is. And so on paper, I think I'm like, oh, what a good, on paper, I think this reads like a good show. In practice, not so much.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. It looks good. Actors are good. It's just, it's the writing.
Yeah.
The writings is what's letting it down.
Well, what do you want to give episode 3, Jordan?
I don't know. It feels like right down the middle, and maybe I'm being generous. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10, and it's not even that it's good. It's just like it's a quite forgettable episode. I think it's of the three. I think Whiteout, for some reason, I remember we were just about to record, and I was like, oh, I can't even remember what my notes were this episode. It's just so forgettable.
I think I mentioned to you this off air, but when we did a typical episode of Automan, I would take my raw notes as I watched it, and I'd write probably like 8 pages in a notebook to keep track of what was going on. These shows are an hour long, so 20 minutes longer than Automan. I write less than 4 pages because so little happens.
Yeah, I don't write a lot either. Well, because you realize at a certain point that so many scenes are inconsequential.
They don't mean anything.
Yeah.
You'll find out what they mean like 30 minutes from
because
now.
You don't need to, because the character literally will say, I'm upset about this, I'm angry, I'm happy, or whatever, and you just need that scene. You go, oh, so all those last 5 scenes is just so this character can say they were jealous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I actually think Whiteout has been like it's the culmination of all the bad things we've seen coming, but like it just in its worst form.
Yeah.
So scattered, 3 or 4 different
Very, very
plots
scattered,
happening
I'd
at the
agree.
same time that don't coalesce into anything. And at the end of the day, like they're like, oh, a Whiteout was coming, and it's done.
Yeah.
Nobody learned anything. Nobody got it any further ahead. I'm gonna give it a 2, I think.
2.
And then there's episode 4. I'll start us off here.
Yeah.
I actually think episode 4 is the best episode they've ever done.
I agree.
It's cohesive. There's not like 17 plots. They're all tied together. Even the stuff with Stella, like not great with Stella and Lily, the daughter stuff, but at least like it was related in that she steals a document. Like all the plots felt connected to each other. It all felt around this chasing of this character, Elijah. Obviously, they got a great actor to play Elijah, so I really enjoyed watching him. He did a great job. I would have watched a show about that janitor and Elijah more than I would have watched this show.
Would have been a better episode.
And so it's still not good, though. The problem is it's just a badly written show, but I think this is the best it's been written, so I'm going to give it a 6.
I'm not too far off. I agree with you on all your points, but I just think by episode 4, they should have caught their legs at this point, so I can only give them a 5.5, because it's 4 episodes in. That's 50% of this season,
Yeah, fair
and we're
enough.
still having the same problem, so I agree with you. It's a much better episode, but
Like,
man, guys, you've got to be, we've got to get things going.
If this rest of the series was at least as well, not well written, but like at least cohesive in plot
Yeah.
point. Like if they all made sense together, all the plots, at least it would have been like, I don't know. This is at least the closest I've seen it to being like, oh, here's almost a show that works.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And ghosts.
Lots of ghosts. I liked the ghost stuff the most because I'm like, oh, at least they're doing spooky things now. Like it's fun to watch, but they're like 2 minutes of the whole episode of the ghosts.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up. So, listener, you can email us at continuedragging@gmail.com if you have thoughts about Outcasts. And, of course, on Instagram and Twitter, I'm going to have lots of weather, lots of whiteouts, lots of various tornadoes.
We've said this multiple times in the past, but this is another show where in little snippets, it looks very exciting. And we should mention, at the beginning and end of each episode, they have a recap and then a preview. And those are always done in a very action-based, heavy beat, sort of like, you won't believe what's going to happen, which is funny because it's like, that's not what this show is. And it's weird to sell it that way, but
Yeah.
But
you'd be better off just watching those clips. You'd get the whole show.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And I guess that about wraps it up, though.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, I'll see you next week. And, listener, I'll see you then, too.
See you then.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rex Seidler. Produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.